Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to the Best of Designers series. Today we're taking a look at one of the longer-running designers in the game business, and that's James Ernest. Now, James Ernest is known when person for his quirky personality. Very funny guy. He's done podcasts. He runs one at Origins every year. He also, for a while, when they were looking for an MC to run these events, he was the person that they would bring in, him and Mike Selinker, because of just his sense of humor. His sense of humor has translated to his games, and in fact, he started the company Cheap Ass Games a while ago, and the whole premise of that company, to much degree, was the humor that was involved in the games. And you look at these games, and they still have that silly sense of humor to them. Now, that company has evolved. He was involved with Titanic Games. He's designed some very serious style games too, but he's also a great game designer. Many of his games have done really well. I think some of them were hampered at the beginning because of the components that, Cheap Ass was known for just basically having a few cards and you go get your own bits. Many of these games have been republished and redone in better formats, and you can see just how well that they have done. So today I'm going to talk about my 10 favorite games from him. Let's get started. Number 10 is Before I Kill You, Mr. Spy. Actually, it was called Before I Kill You, Mr. Bond. Copyrights made the name of that game change. And in this game, you are a evil megalomaniac, and you are trying to capture spies and explain your plans to them before you get rid of them. And other players are trying to stop you from doing that. There's a bit of a take-that game, but there's also a bit of bluffing in this game. The theming helps a lot. It's a very small, simple game, but I like it. Number 9 is Pirates of the Spanish Main. You may not have heard of this game if you're just getting into gaming, but back, several years ago, this was a big deal. This from WizKids games, where basically it was a collectible game, and you got these cardboard ships that you punched out and then put together, and then went around. They had the tiniest dice in the world, but it was actually a little fun miniature game as you just sailed your ships around and fought each other. It died out, as many of these collectible games tend to do, but it was a lot of fun. Number 8 is Unexploded Cow. The theming of this game is the silly part of it, of course. You have cows, you have mines in this field, you need to get rid of both of them. And so, okay, that's silliness. It's not as gross as it sounds. A fun game, but there was a lot of interesting mechanisms in the game too, to the point where it was actually re-released several years later. Number 7 is The Big Idea. This is one of the several games, and in fact, it was one of the first in which you are trying to sell an idea to other players. There's a lot of these games that are out there. This is one of the first one where you have several, you have the next big idea and you have to explain to everyone else, and it's funny and silly, things like that, and then people are voting to see which idea was the best. Number 6 is the game he was most well known for a while, and that is Kill Dr. Lucky. Kill Dr. Lucky is sort of the prequel to Clue, where you and a bunch of other players in a mansion, and Dr. Lucky is there, and you are trying to kill him. The problem is, you have to be alone, and so everyone's moving around the mansion trying to be in the same room as Dr. Lucky and alone, and no one else can see you. And even if they can't see you, and you're alone with Dr. Lucky, and you try to kill him, other players will play cards that stop you from doing so. There was a sequel to this, Save Dr. Lucky, and then there was Save Dr. Lucky on the moon base or whatever. There's been a lot of different variations. There's been many versions, a deluxe version, the 19th anniversary edition, whatever. There's all kinds of crazy things out there, but the core of the game is fun. Kill Dr. Lucky. Number 5 is Fish Cook. Fish Cook is one of the last games that came from this line, and it is essentially an economic game where you are getting fish and cooking them and trying to get different sets with dice and things. This was not a heavy economic game, but leaning towards that end. And so if you know him for his whimsy and such, this game might throw you off, but it is an excellent little game. Number 4 is one that just came out, Talk. This is based on the Name of the Wind series, where they play some sort of, abstract game. It's like the game of that series. So he made this game. And his goal when designing it was to make a game that felt like it's been around for a really long time. And he succeeded in this game where you're just basically putting and moving a few pieces on the board, some blocks of wood. They have a deluxe versions, normal versions, but the gameplay is really well done. In fact, it's one of the best abstract games I've ever seen. That's Talk. Number 3 is Camden, which was originally called Agora. This is a tile placement market game in which you are building a market. But what's interesting about this game is the tiles, which are cards, can be placed any way you want. So you can place them diagonally and whatever. So you're building this crazy market, which if you go to one of these crazy like outdoor markets, it feels kind of like that. It's not, nice and straight with aisles and everything, all kinds of weird things. And then there's fires and all kinds of disasters. It's a really well-designed game. Number 2 is Lords of Vegas. Now this game, which was I believe a co-design that he worked on from Mayfair Games. Lords of Vegas was a big grandiose game where you were building different casinos on the Vegas Strip and then trying to get people to come to them. And you were taking them over from other players. There was a lot of dice rolling in this game, but dice placement, and then sometimes trying to do a hostile takeover of other people's casinos. There's a little expansion for it called Up, which lets you also make high rises. It's a really excellent game. If you never had a chance to play it, check it out. That's Lords of Vegas. And my favorite game that he has designed is Lightspeed, although it was just re-released a few years ago as Stellar Conflict, which added some things, but it's essentially the same game where you have these cards, a deck of cards, which are your spaceships. You say go, and you start putting them on the table as fast as you can in all different directions. And then these spaceships all shoot at each other, and you see who wins. You get points for shooting other spaceships, hopefully not blowing up your own spaceships, for mining asteroids on the table with your lasers as your ships. It takes longer to score than it does to play, and yet it's so satisfying. There's nothing like this. It's one of the most unique games I've ever played. It is a lot of fun, and Stellar Conflict added special abilities and made the decks different. One that's in my collection. I like it a lot. So those are my favorite games from James Ernest. Tell me what yours are in the comments below. He certainly has had an effect on the hobby and is still making great games today. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel. You've been watching Designer's Best, James Ernest.